If I keep going, I'll be able to do some low voiceovers in Hearthstone. I can sound like Thrall or Garrosh if I keep wearing out my voice like this. All right, so Shaman's has a Burlock. Very funny pun there with Murloc. 2 mana, 2/2. I know I said it was very funny and I didn't laugh, but I laughed when I first saw it. So you just had to be there. If you don't understand, get a sense of humor and understand what it means to LOL on the internet. But I think it's a very funny card. 2 mana, 2/2 Murloc. Battlecry, freeze an enemy. It's a very strong effect to freeze something for tempo, and it goes into Murloc decks for Shaman, like the quest. I don't know if Shaman is weak on 2 mana. In fact, I think there's too many things to do on 2 mana for Shaman traditionally. So I don't think this is like a turn 2 play that you usually want to do. So if you do end up playing a Murloc deck, I don't think you're gonna keep this card in your mulligan unless you absolutely need to. If it's like an aggro mirror of some kind, or if you're trying to play like against an aggro deck, you might want to freeze like your opponent's weapon, or you want to freeze a minion for trades. You'd much rather play like Rockpool Hunter, or even like Murloc Tidecaller for like the quest, or things like that, or like, you know, even hero powering in some scenarios is like better than Burlock. But its effect late game is really good. You can freeze really strong minions attacks and whatnot. Also, I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about a card like this and not talk about like a lot of other cards, because it seems to be the big theme for Shaman this expansion is tapping into the freeze mechanic. So let's go ahead and just like talk about Murabi first, I guess, or second here. Murabi, whenever a minion is frozen, add a copy of it to your hand, and that gives Shaman like a really powerful source of card draw that aggressive decks tend to like lack. But I don't think aggro Shaman really needs card draw, and they wouldn't put Murabi into it. So the slow defensive Shamans actually do have a decent amount of card draw with like Mana Tide Totem, Stonehill Defender, and things like that. Like they're never really hurting too much out of cards unless they're playing like a mirror and they're playing attrition styles. Usually Shaman like gets so much off of just hero power playing one card and then threatening Bloodlust. So even in slow matchups, I rarely see Shaman run out of cards if they play very like conservative and like they recognize their win conditions. Most of their insane swings only take 1 or 2 cards, like Flame Tongue Totem hero powers and evolves on like a big board with Doppelgangster. So Murabi, what it does do though, it introduces an element of like interaction by freezing your opponent, which is not exactly intuitive. Very cool. And it's a weak stat line, so you're going to probably want to combo with stuff. The 6 mana allows it to be played with Burlock, or maybe 2. Maybe even Avalanche. Freeze a minion and deal 3 damage to adjacent one. This is a really cool card as well. No pun intended. Avalanche is also really great because it encourages positioning again. That's something that people have been clamoring for a while. They want more thought being put into how they position their minions, because that does seem to be a trait that's really important in Hearthstone specifically. In other card games, you don't really see positioning matter that much. That was actually like a big thing Hearthstone introduced. Like Flame Tongue Totem, Direwolf Alpha, Defender of Argus, Sunfury Protector. Those were like, oh wow, positioning matters so much. If you play other card games like Shadowverse and other stuff, like they don't even give you that opportunity to position correctly. So Avalanche is very cool, very nice to push. It's very cool to see them. I'm not trying to pun anymore, but it's it's a sweet card, both in design, because it's like one guy gets buried and it deals like all his damage around it. So flavor wise, it makes sense. Fits thematically with what Shaman wants to do, and it encourages positioning. So very good fit for this expansion. And avalanches are just sweet. We have Avalanche, Volcano. It's like these big effects off of mountains. I want to see like a rock slide card next set if possible. Whatever theme that they have, I don't know what it is, but they can just do like a rock slide. Just do like every single natural disaster around a mountain, and that'd be kind of cool to see Shaman like actually control the elements through natural landmarks like that. It'd be sweet. This makes you feel like good when you play Shaman, right? Because like playing Volcano is a very rewarding feeling, especially if the 15th tick lands perfectly on that enemy minion, like that 8/8 or something like that. Oh, that's super sweet. I'm like all over the place evaluating the class right now. I went from Burlock to Murabi to Avalanche. Interesting to note that Avalanche can hit your own minions, and Murabi can draw cards that is friendly as well. So you can Burlock your opponent only, but if you like Avalanche your own minions, you can like use it in very corner case scenario to like say you have Jinyu Water Speaker on the board or Thing from Below, you can like freeze it and then like play another one. I know it's like that's not what you want to traditionally do, but it's interesting that you can. And I like that that there's like options to choose. You know, one of the coolest things to do in Hearthstone is when you do something very counterintuitive. You don't like, for example, in Freeze Mage Mirrors, you used to ping your own health, so that way Fireball doesn't kill you at 1, or it doesn't activate your Ice Block at 1, it activates at 6. So, you know, one of the cool things to do is to like try to do stuff to yourself and then use that as an advantage. And I wonder if there's ever going to be a case where like you Murabi and then Frost Shock your own minion to gate it, but I don't know. It opens up a lot of questions and possible scenarios for use. Icebreaker, I'm just going to jump to Icebreaker because it's also a freeze card. We can just do all the freezes together. Icebreaker, I didn't think it was very good, and then I saw Kibler stream with Benbro. They did a fantastic job, by the way. If you guys missed it and you're in EU and you're jonesing for more Knights of the Frozen Throne content, go check out that reveal stream. Super fun and really good demonstration of all the cards there. Icebreaker performed a lot better than I thought it would. I first thought I was like, 3 mana 1/3 that needs a conditional way to kill my opponent's minion. Not that great, but there's actually a lot of ways to freeze your opponent. So Icebreaker performed reasonably well. And if you think about it, even if Icebreaker only kills 1 minion, you spend 3 mana and a little bit of your own health, assuming you're a control deck and can handle it, to kill a minion, which is kind of what you want at 3 mana, like Hex, right? Hex kills a minion. And I know it's different because 3 mana is very contested for Shaman. There's like, for Control Shaman, you have Lightning Storms, Hex, Feral Spirits if you want to be defensive. Icebreaker is now in it. Mana Tide Totems. I said that already, but there's a lot of things that you can do on 3 mana. But even if you get 1 minion kill with Icebreaker, it might be worth it. And then you have this like added bonus of like maybe getting 2, maybe killing just a one health minion for a ping. I slept on this card a lot, and I actually think it's not as bad or trashy as I originally thought. So I might be underestimating it before. But now maybe not so much, especially because there's cards like Voodoo Hexer, which is super duper solid. 5 mana 2/7, Ally Armorsmith, but instead of gaining armor, you freeze any character, and the fact that it can freeze the face is really good. To stop aggro, it's a very defensive slow control card or mid-range value card, depends on what you want to build with it. And it's not like oppressive to try and pressure for aggro, right? Like aggro shamans don't necessarily want to run a 2/7 for 5 mana with taunt, at least right now on paper. So I like it, and it fits super well with Murabi because you can play Voodoo Hexer. Your opponent doesn't trade into it because what they don't want to do is attack into a freeze minion with taunt, unless they can kill it. If they have like a couple of 3/3s, what they don't want to do is attack into Voodoo Hexer, because then they freeze their minion for their next turn. They can't attack. So Voodoo Hexer, assuming it doesn't get immediately killed by like an 8/8 or like a 7/7 on turn 4, can help you play Murabi, trade into a minion, freeze it, assuming it doesn't die, or maybe it does, and then you draw that card. So there's a lot of synergy with that. And you've also set up Icebreaker. So let's say you've set up Icebreaker, you've played Voodoo Hexer, it survives, you play Murabi, trade into a minion, kill it with Icebreaker, draw a card. It's like there's a lot of ways that this thing can go around and really reinforce each other. So I actually really think that Free Shaman has some potential. But I don't know if it's going to be as powerful as, Jade Shaman currently is, or Evolve Shaman, because Evolve Shaman got a really powerful card too in the Thrall's Vesser, but we'll talk about that in a second. Let me cover everything else because I just went all over the place with this class. We'll talk about the last freeze card, Cryostasis. Give a minion +3/+3 and freeze it. Pretty cool because, again, you can do it to not only your opponent's minions and freeze it, but you can do it to your own. You might be wondering, why would I ever freeze my own minions? The answer is if you want to play like a very defensive style and you're playing like value-oriented control shaman, like with spirit echoes. Let's say you want to play like let's say you're in a pinch. Not only can you use this cryostasis with like Morabi, or you can freeze a minion with Icebreaker and kill it. You can also like put it on your taunt totem, and then taunt totem's not going to attack anyways. So what you essentially have done is played a 3/3 or for 4 mana with taunt, or sorry, 3/5. So like playing it on a taunt totem with cryostasis in pinch scenarios might help you, and you always have a relevant minion to attach it to. And there's a lot of like cool counterintuitive combos that you can use with cryostasis. Really interesting card. Really interesting card. And flavor wise, it makes it's really funny. The art is hilarious. It's like a walrus stuck in a block of ice. But walruses are like pretty strong, so you're kind of like transforming a totem into a walrus and stuff. I don't know. It's cool. It's got like walrus power, or is it even a walrus? Maybe it's like a manatee or something. I don't know. A seal. So good stuff. Really interesting card and fits the freeze. I don't know if it'll see more than just like a one-off, but it could be used. Like, you remember like how a lot of people used to use the Ysera Nightmare on defense as defense? Like they'd play some kind of small taunt, and then like say you play Stonehill Defender, and you only have this Nightmare that you can't use proactively. You can slap it onto a taunt and wait for your opponent to have to not trade into it, but this stats stick permanently and doesn't kill it. So. Defensive slow shamans love stuff like cryostasis, but they might not fit it because shaman again is a class very competitive with all the cards that they use. What have we not talked about? We haven't talked about ice fishing yet. This is a card that improves consistency significantly. It's 2 mana, draw 2, and usually when you play a Murloc deck, you're playing a lot of Murlocs, so you won't often hit that roadblock of like tutoring for a specific card and not getting full value off of it. Sometimes you play Arcanologist, you don't draw a secret because you've drawn all of them. Sometimes you play Howling Commander, you won't have enough Divine Shield minions. When you play Murlocs, you're playing like a lot of synergy with Murlocs, especially in Shaman. If you're playing like the Finja package with only 5 Murlocs, you're not going to probably want to play Ice Fishing. At most, you probably want to play 1 because you want Finja to draw those Murlocs. So it's a very interesting card to put in combo decks as well. I believe Just Saiyan was showing people that he thinks Ice Fishing plus Coldlight Oracle as your only 2 Murlocs in a deck like puts a ton of draw into your hand, and that might make some kind of combo deck viable. Maybe you play Barnes into Malygos into Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst, and then Ice Fishing helps draw all that stuff. So as much as you might look, oh wow, this is like really good for Unite the Murlocs quest and other ways to get card draw into like an aggressive Murloc deck, there's also some combo implications to it too. It's very deliberate. And 2 mana draw 2 is just like really good. So Ice Fishing could be one of those like sleeper cards in the set that like busts Shaman as a class. If you think about some of the most powerful combo stuff in Hearthstone history, a large proponent of it has been the card draw engine. Gadgetzan Auctioneer for Miracle Rogue and Jade Druid and all this other stuff. Or you look at Battle Rage and Acolyte of Pain for Patron Warrior. Freeze Mage has like all this insane draw, like Mad Scientist and Acolytes of Pain and Arcane. So like part of the reason why those combos can get enabled is the card draw. In fact, one of the things I talked about is I think if Priest was able to get like card draw back in the days when OTK Priest was like being flirted with, it would actually be one of the strongest decks in the game if it had just more consistent card draw, but it really didn't. So that's what limited it as a factor compared to like some other combo decks. Because I thought about it, I was like, well, some of these combos are like reasonably good, but it doesn't have good card draw to really back it up consistently. And Ice Fishing might enable combo shamans as much as it might enable Murlocs shamans as well. Drakari Defender Not really that great of a card. 3 mana 2/8 taunt is like solid against aggro, but the overload is pretty savage onto your mana curve. It's a great evolve result. It's a great devolve result for you if it happens to you. Outside of that, though, I think the fact that you sacrifice almost all your turn or all your turn on the early curve might be too much. It does synergize with Snow Fury Giant, but that's kind of like a corner case scenario. So I don't think this card is like very good at all. In fact, I think it's kind of bad just because Shaman doesn't want to be passing too much. It does get better in the late game because 2/8 scales really well with like Flametongue Totem. So Jakari Defender and like Flametongue Totem becomes like a 3/8, and then you play for like 5 mana, and then you can overload for 3 mana from like turn 6 onwards for reasonably and not fall too far behind. But it does seem to suffer like a lot of drawback. And it should, because 3 mana 2/8 is like super obnoxious. And if it was like a 3 mana 2/8 that didn't have significant overload, then Evolve Shaman or like aggressive Shamans can play this and have that Tar Creeper effect. Just, you know, play like a bunch of threats. Flametongue never dies. Maybe they squeeze in a Mana Tide, that never dies. And then you're like healing it with like healing totems. It just like gets obnoxious. So significant drawback. Not too impressed by the card. And it's just like below average. Okay, I think I've covered all of Shaman except for the Death Knight. Oh, by the way, in Arena, when you do see like a handful of Alchemists and Kooky Chemists, be very careful about Jakari Defender. You play it on turn 3, and then your opponent swaps it and trades it for the 2-drop, and you overload. That could lose you the game. So just be careful of that. That's like an interaction that doesn't really happen very often, but I expect some streamers to get wrecked by that sometimes. Excuse me. Alright, so Thrall Deathseer, Battlecry, transform your minions into random ones that cost 2 more. It's 5 mana. It's the cheapest Death Knight, which gives it the most accessibility outside of Druid ramping it. And, you know, the thing about Thrall Deathseer is that its hero power is very good in vacuum. Transform a friendly minion into a random one that costs 1 more, so it's really good. As everyone knows, evolving something is does 2 things. 1, it upgrades your tempo, and 2, it kind of like effectively heals your minion by you know, if you have a you know 4 mana 4/4, you trade into a 3/2, and then you evolve it, and even if the stats are the same, like a 4/4, it kind of like heals it. While giving potential for more. Obviously, it can screw you by evolving into the very bad mana cost cards. So like 6 mana has like the big time Racketeer, 5 mana can evolve to a Bomb Squad. So there's like a lot of bad scenarios. There's like a handful of bad scenarios, but most of the time it's gonna be really good. The big drawback though of the Shaman Death Knight is that you lose fundamentally the Shaman hero power, which is so core to what you want to do with all your decks. Most Shaman decks, I mean, if not all of them, really depend on the hero power. The only one that really never did was Aggro Shaman, and that's why they played Sir Finley to try to improve it. But this doesn't exactly go in an aggressive Shaman deck. It can give you a big swing because, you know, Battlecry Evolve 2 is very good swing. But let's say it doesn't win you the game outright. You effectively lost a lot of your scalability into the late game. You know, if you run, like if you're playing an Evolve deck, you kind of want to have Bloodlust into your decks. And now your Bloodlust is like significantly weaker, or Flametongue Totem gets significantly weaker. So this is a pretty significant trade-off. And the hero power for Evolve gets a little bit more complicated too, primarily because Shaman also is a class that thrives off of tempoing by playing Overload. By playing Overload. Overload puts all the cost up front, and then you pay the deficit later. And so a lot of things like 4 mana 7/7 and Earth Elementals like kind of work against the Transmute Spirit. So like individually really powerful cards don't necessarily fit with Thrall Deathseer. So you're kind of already combating a fundamental aspect of the class by introducing this hero power. But you know, obviously hero power is very strong if you're able to play attrition and keep 1 minion alive. And you know what I am curious about? I'm wondering like how this works with like giants. Like if you play like Mountain Giant and you transmute it, I don't think it works, right? It just like doesn't do anything, or does it transform it into a healed mountain giant? I think I'm thinking that it doesn't do anything. Like if it can't evolve to a cost higher, like mountain, there's no 13 mana cards, right? So if you transmute Spirit of Mountain Giant, I don't think it basically heals it. It might not do anything. But what you can do, and I think someone in chat already mentioned it, because some people have been tagging me, is that you can play this in a Jade Shaman. And I completely agree with that, because Jades, you can play like really powerful stuff late game, but early game, if you're playing like, Jade's Claws and Jade's Spirits and whatnot, you can Thrall Deathseer to make up that tempo, and then eventually have Jades carry you the rest of the way. And Jades are guaranteed a high health count after 5/5s, so you can use the Transmute Spirit very effectively to constantly gain that. And then you have like Spirit Echoes and other cards to gain value, like Stonehill Defender. So you'll never really run out of resources. So Thrall Deathseer might actually fit more into like the Jade Shaman and like those kinds of decks, as opposed to the traditionally aggressive decks. I put it in the bottom 3 of classes primarily because it has a significant drawback compared to other classes that don't seem to lose too much by having their hero power change. In fact, a lot of classes upgrade their hero power. This seems to be a give and take. Another spoiler alert, I am playing Shaman tomorrow's Omni Zone. I have Shaman, Paladin, and Mage, and I've built like 12 decks total, and Shaman I built like 5 or 6 of them specifically. So there's a lot of directions Shaman can go, and I think Shaman's one of the most exciting classes to play for Knights of the Frozen Throne. Even though immediately I don't know if it's going to be one of the most powerful, at least in Standard, I think it's going to be one of the most fun to build. There's so many ways you can build it. You can go ahead and bolster your Murloc Quest Shamans or your Evolve Shamans. You can play free Shaman. You can play combo Shamans with like Ice Fishing, Cold Light stuff. You can play super control value Shamans with like Spirit Echo on Snow Fury Giants. You can like overload, because like you can play Volcano, discount your Snow Fury Giant even more. And then, of course, you can play, like, Thrall Deathseer to kind of, like, experiment with stuff. So there's, like, 4 or 5 different ways you can play Shaman. And if you want more than that, and you're like, oh, Shaman's so stale, like, then just, like, take a break from Hearthstone, because you've played way too freaking much if you're bored by 4 or 5 different ways you can build the deck and climb the legend with it. Whew. Oh, man. It's almost 2 a.m. All right, I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. How will be able to get the new promotional card back? I don't know exactly which one you're talking about. If you're talking about the Frozen Throne one, you got to pre-order, which I think you have like less than 10 hours to do right now. Have I tried Eternal? Yes, I have tried Eternal. It's the card game on the market, like in the popular market. Like I put it in quotations because it's not super duper popular, but in terms of the ones that people do know about for digital card games, it's the one I've played the least of. I played a lot more Shadowverse, Duelist, Elder Scrolls, Gwent. I've logged at least 100 plus hours in all of them. This one was like 30 to 40. I don't even know. I have to look at Steam. I played basically like 2 drafts and a little bit, like the tutorial, 2 drafts and a little bit of casual matchmaking. Fun. I think Eternal, to no surprise, does draft the best out of any digital card game. But that's because they've largely taken a lot of their inspiration from Magic the Gathering, so it doesn't surprise me there. And I would love to see more of that kind of style. I love drafting. I think limited formats are my favorite way to play card games in general. My favorite game mode in Hearthstone is Sealed. I actually love playing Sealed. It's super fun. You just get the rush of opening packs, and then you get like a randomized pool of cards, and you still have to do deck building. It's not like spontaneous, like, Arena feels like you really have to compromise a lot with and you're not making too many decisions. A lot of times it's very clear-cut choice. Versus Sealed, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. What are your thoughts on Gwent? I don't want to talk too much about that because I think it's like a completely separate topic. But and I kind of want to get to this card review. But the TLDR, my opinion on Gwent, is that I can appreciate its complexity. I don't feel like that excited by Gwent. I think the rushing Gwent comes from watching a strategy come together, and Gwent feels a lot like being able to play like Patron Warrior or Miracle Rogue successfully, like, or like, not even Miracle Rogue, but like Freeze Mage, where like the big enjoyment of Gwent is that you get to play your deck. But once you start learning the patterns, it kind of plays out a little too similarly, in my opinion, and once the meta gets figured out, it stales really quickly for me. But I can appreciate its complexity, and I think it has a lot of potential. They definitely seem to be unafraid to do big changes to the game, which I think is really important for the health of it. And ultimately, I think it's really good that CDPR continues to push Blizzard and like other developers to innovate. Because right now, I think the card game market needs to innovate a lot, and they have through Hearthstone and a few other things. But it needs more. I think they still justify archaic practices a little too much. I do think that Hearthstone's too expensive by a big margin. I used to think it was kind of cheap because I had played Magic and Pokemon, and I spent hundreds for like a deck and a half before. But I still think, relative to the way modern marketing and pricing models have gone, I do think Hearthstone's way too expensive. It's getting better, obviously, but, every little bit of competition that pushes Blizzard to make it more accessible is in my opinion, better. I know, ideally, you pay like $100 and you get the entire expansion or something like that, as opposed to like this weird loot crate phenomenon. But that's neither here nor there for the card review. Let's go ahead and move on to Warlock. That's my last question for chat for right now. Let's go ahead and talk about Sanguine Reveler. Linguini Ravioli. Linguini Ravioli. 1 mana, 1/1. Battlecry, destroy your friendly minion, game +2/+2. I think this card and Defile might be the strongest cards in Warlock for this set. This card is super duper powerful if you're able to play it with Possessed Villager turn 1, or if you play like a Voidwalker, even just get a little bump of damage. 1 mana 3/3 is so good. People are not talking about this card, and this could be what puts Zoo back on the map. There's forbidden ritual as well, so like you can get like different tokens onto the board reliably. And there's a decent amount of eggs in the rotation now, so you can like kill your Devilsaur egg, which Rekful seems to be obsessed with. Every time I talk with Rekful about Hearthstone, he's always talking about Devilsaur egg. So like, yeah, this is another card that does exactly that. Plus, you might have like death rattles that really benefit from dying immediately. Besides that, in Wild, of course, you're looking at Sylvanas and other things like that. So, it's one of those like innocuous 1 mana cards that just might bust the game. Who knows? And they already have Flame Imp, so like Sanguine Reveler and like this and just like other stuff. It's like, holy crap, you're just doing so much. Like someone posted the dream, right? You play Flame Imp, coin Voodoo Doctor, and play the Happy Ghouls for free. And then you have like Sanguini Reveler to help like reinforce that idea that you get to play this 3/3 really cheaply in case you don't need to use Voodoo Doctor. So it's like, it's really interesting to see what you can do with this 1 mana card. And I think everyone has been saying enough, not everyone, but a huge portion of the player base keeps talking about how they love Zoo and they miss Zoo and they think it's like one of the few like skill testing decks, like one of the true few honest decks in Hearthstone, which I think was BS. I don't think Zoo was a very honest deck. I think it was honestly kind of BS with what they did with Life Tap. Now I'm thinking about like every reason why I hated Zoo, but I can understand why they like that deck. I'm personally like, oh god, I like, especially when Zoo went through a discard phase where it's like the Silverware Golems versus Doomguard stuff. Oh my god, don't even get me started on that. I'm not a big fan of that. Not a fan. But yes, Linguini Ravioli is going to be a card that might push Zoo to the next level. Howl Fiend, 3 mana, 3/6. Whenever this minion takes damage, discard a random card. Obviously terrible. Like, there's no way to just phrase it. This card is just beyond trash. It is something that you lose the game for having in your deck. At least if you draw patches, you can use as a 1/1 charge. This just you do not want. But I guess we can use this to introduce Treachery. Bad cards exist. with Treachery and kind of make a combo plan of some sort. You can play Treachery, Howl Fiend, someone says Spreading Madness, or even if you just make them discard one or two cards, it's like that can ruin a combo deck. If you play this, if combo decks start to become really oppressive, and I think two archetypes can truly dominate Hearthstone, is combo and mid range, because like aggro, ultimately, if it's only aggro, will get stopped by control, and control, if it's only control, will get stopped by a combo deck. But mid range decks have been super dominant before without any weaknesses because they curve out really perfectly. They have adaptable, flexible resources, and they can play aggressive, defensive. They can play combo. They can do a combo. They can be defensive and turtle. And then combo decks, we know can oppress the meta for sure. So, obviously if aggro is really strong and like control is really strong, it can dominate the meta too. But like the way Hearthstone has gone has always been those two archetypes. And if a combo deck ever really gets too insane, Warlock actually has a way to really mess with them. With Treachery and Howl Fiend and some crazy combo stuff. Outside of that though, Howl Fiend's just like terrible. You don't want it off Evolve. It like makes Evolve Shaman super scary to play sometimes because now you have like another way you can lose the game at a different mana cost. Before you can lose by Doomsayers. Now you can lose by Howl Fiends at 3. You can get Bomb Squads at 5. There's so many like pitfalls at every mana cost now that you're like scared to evolve too many 2-mana minions. But you still do it because it's just the right proactive play. It's just a low percentage chance. And when it happens, it's going to be glorious for like the meme streamers. It's going to be awful for tournament streams because you get to see, wow, that guy just lost because he made the right play and Howl Fiend just like, shoved it up his behind. So it's just like, yeah. I mean, it's a 3/6, so it helps you trade. And in some scenarios where you have no cards in hand is also like pretty decent for tempo. But on the early gameplay, you're always going to have cards unless you do like the Happy Ghoul Dream. And Howl Fiend is just pretty bad. Not to mention that it also like kind of subtly nerfs things like Cabal Trafficker and other things that generate demons like Kazakus potions. You might get Howl Fiend. You're like, wow, this is useless. The best thing you can do is like Shadow Flame the Howl Fiend. So it's like it's an interesting card, and I do agree with the philosophy that sometimes there's a lot of like fun in using these bad cards to mess with your opponent, but I don't expect it to be tier 1. And it shouldn't be, because if Howl Fiend ends up being like a really powerful card, it's gonna be a very unfun experience in Hearthstone, because it's just like, if you somehow get it every time, or if you're the opponent and you get it every time, you discard your hand, that just sucks. You can't really play Hearthstone. So hopefully Howl Fiend is just like meme tier and nothing more. Drain Soul is like power creeping, not Siphon Soul, Drain Life. And it's not like Drain Life saw any play, but I don't know. Maybe Drain Life or Drain Soul doesn't see any play either. I think it's pretty weak, even though it does scale with spell damage. Warlock generally doesn't really care about spell damage that much. I don't think they've ever really justified playing Thalnos, or I guess they had a Malygos. They had a Malygos build back in the day with Dragon Warlock, but Drain Soul doesn't do damage to the face, so it doesn't even work in like Wild, for example. So I think this card is pretty weak. It only would see play in like those Reno style decks, but even so, like Reno decks have like Dark Bomb already and other stuff. If you want to play a Kazakus Warlock, you might squeeze this in Standard, just because you need the life gain. But it looks really unimpressive otherwise. The life steal does scale, though. That's the one difference between this and Drain Life, is that in Drain Life, I believe you scale with spell damage, but you gain 2 health no matter what. So if you have like a Malygos, Drain Life does 7 damage and heal 2. Drain Soul with Malygos and Standard would deal 7 damage and heal for 7. That's the big difference. Pretty significant power creep if you think about it. 1 mana less with better scaling, but I mean, Drain Life wasn't seeing play, and this probably won't see play either. Defile, deal 1 damage to all minions of any die, casts again. I think if you've watched another stream, I'm one of the last people to do card reviews before the expansion, so you probably heard enough about it. Really great design, really cool effect, great flavor, skill testing card, just everything you want in a card, honestly, that can help define the format if control warlocks become a thing, and for a class that needed it. You know, if this card came out for Priest during the Karazhan, people would have loved it. And it fits a Warlock theme perfectly. It's just like the flavor of how Warlock tends to corrupt and sacrifice, and Defile is totally up that alley. Also, when this gets cast, I guarantee you I am going to yell Plague from the Korean StarCraft Brood War days. For people who don't know, I will yell Plague. You can hold me to that, and if someone wants to hold me accountable, feel free. Because as soon as Defile comes out and destroys like 4 or 5 minions, we're going to turn into a Korean broadcast. And Kibler will stare at me and chuckle awkwardly and not know what the hell I'm referencing. He's just going to be like, ha 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 ha. Okay. Wow, Defile kills everything. And I'm going to be like, yep. I normally would do a much better Kibler impression, but my voice is shot. I need to keep going because I still need to do neutrals. Unwilling Sacrifice, choose a friendly minion, destroy it, and a random enemy minion. Works in token decks. You're looking at Forbidden Ritual, you're looking at eggs, you're looking at weak minions. The fact that it's a random enemy minion makes it significantly weaker, so I don't think its power level is that high. Warlock already has a lot of great single target removal for control decks in Blast Crystal Potion and Siphon Soul. It is a huge nerf to Yaxaron though. Because you can just destroy Yaxaron on an empty board if you play it, and it's like the first spell being cast. I guess it's not the worst if you already have a board, but one of those funny things where you play Yaxaron and all you do is kill your own Yaxaron. There's another thing that does it, but it's like more guaranteed. Like if you Fireball, you could Fireball Yaxaron or something else, like your own phase. But only Sacrifice usually will target Yag on its own board. But there's in my opinion, there's better removal options unless a Token Shaman can really come out, which I don't think it will. Despicable Dreadlord. This is a card that me and Trump revealed, and I do think it's one of the better Warlock cards, probably top 3 for the set for them. And the reason why is because at the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all minions, and that's the reason why. At the end of the turn, which means it's not a battle cry, deal 1 damage to everything, like Dread Infernal. If this stays alive, your opponent's board will continually take damage and maybe even get wiped. Very powerful anti-aggro card, because aggro needs to trade into this. Otherwise, aggro keeps losing their board. And, it's one of those things where, Warlock really needs a card like this to not just get run over. So, very strong. The stat line is passable for a 5-mana card. 4/5 is okay. 5/5 is obviously the bar, but it's good. Has a pseudo taunt against aggressive decks. Has demon synergy for all those demon things we mentioned, whether it's Blood Fury Potion demon buffs like with Demon Fire, or getting a random demon off of Kazakus potions or Cabal Trafficker, or if you want to play Wild and play Void Caller, and Despicable Dreadlord can summon it off the Void Caller, so you can do some combos. Not to mention that in Arena, this card is super sick. This card is super duper sick in Arena. Holy crap! Warlock is a class that sacrifices its ability to impact the board by drawing cards, and now you have an ability to ping everything. You've seen the effect of Twilight Flamecaller. This card is like that, but you need to remove it. This might push Warlock back to the top of Arena with Despicable Dreadlord, and just as you stabilize, they play Abyssal Enforcer. I could see this being a card that gets that 50% nerf in Arena in a couple months or something. It's only a rare. You might draft 2 or 3 of them reasonably every run. Gnome Feratu. I want to be counter Circle Jerk. Everyone's it's okay, so there's 2 camps. There's the camp that says, wow, I get to kill off their Malygos or their Alexstrasza or their Auctioneer sometimes and just win the game. And then there's the other camp that says, lol, didn't you guys learn anything from tracking? You guys are bad at Hearthstone. Stay bad, stay free. Thanks for playing River Crocolisk. And they're saying at least River Crocs is a beast, so they're making fun of them. And I agree with the second camp. I do think this card is not that great. It's just more flash and bang more than anything else. But I do want to come a little bit closer. I'm still thinking this card is bad. I would rate it at a 1 out of 5, but Like, not a 0, because 0 means it's absolutely unplayable. But there's instance, like, Hearthstone is actually a very, like, the way you play Hearthstone fundamentally from game design, it's actually a very thin deck. Compared to other card games, you actually get reasonably deep into Hearthstone's deck, unless you're playing an aggro deck or aggro meta, which seems to be always. So I guess traditionally we haven't gotten through. But if you really like analyze the way you dive into decks compared to other card games, Hearthstone, you go really faster. So the comparisons from Magic the Gathering or or even like Pokemon or other things like that is like they have a lot thicker decks, and that's a huge factor when it comes into things. So one card really doesn't matter, but in Hearthstone, because you only have 2 copies of one thing and it's 30 card decks, the burn, I would say like 10% of the time does matter. So I want to give a little credibility to the people who like hype this card a little bit, like just a little bit, but I still think the card is like pretty bad. I'm sure it's probably made some weird dudes top 5 waifus of the set. Not me, not my type. I think, it's probably the pink hair that throws me off. I think I wore it better, so not my waifu, hashtag. But I'm sure it's some guy's weird fantasy over there. I'm sure Eloise will cosplay Nosferatu or something like that. Treachery, we already talked about that, so I need to talk about more. Blood Queen Lanathel, lifesteal, has +1 attack for each card you discard this game. People think this card's like 400 dust. I tend to agree. I don't think this card is very strong. I know Kibler made like a really strong case that says like this card is like much better than you think, and he made a video, which was probably the most aggressive video I've ever seen Kibler make, which is why you're wrong about Hearthstone Frozen Throne. And I can see where he's coming from. Like, the fact that it gains stats even if it's played onto the board. So, like, if you play this on the board and you discard cards, it gains attack permanently for the rest of the game. And the fact that, lifesteal is very good in Warlock. I get it. I still don't think it's that great. Because discard Warlock has proven to be counterintuitive to what a controlling Warlock wants to do. Control Warlock, part of the reason why it's so good is because it can always rely on its hero power to outvalue and outmuscle any kind of deck that goes at its pace. Part of the reason why Reno Lock and Handlock were so good is largely because of Life Tap. And why is Life Tap so good? Because you have an extra card, and if you're going to play a slow game that discards a bunch of cards, and you throw away half your hand just to gain some life, and some mediocre tempo, it's not that great. So, like, I don't know. I gotta disagree with Kibler, like, in the sense that I think you said the card was. I don't know what he said exactly, so I actually have to go back and watch the video to not misquote him. But if he did say it was good, I disagree. If he said it was underrated, I do agree. I don't think it's like as trashy as people think, because I think lifesteal is a super misunderstood mechanic. I think most people think of it as just like a defensive tool, but they don't understand the sustain behind it. They're used to they see Wicker Flame Burn Bristle, but they haven't seen Lifesteal on like a super powerful minion that can't be removed all the time. I've been using the word super a lot, so I need to reduce that. A little bit too much hyperbole there. One of the like meme tier legendaries for now will be proven wrong. But yeah, it counteracts too much of what Warlock wants to do. So that's why, in my opinion, discard Warlock has only worked aggressively, because you don't care about discarding your hand because you're fighting for tempo with discard, and then you life tap to compensate for it, and you're okay with keeping a low card count. Versus if you're playing control, you're discarding half your hand, and you're trying to fight for card advantage with control, which is fundamentally what the archetype wants to do. Okay, I talked about it enough. You guys get my point. Blood Reaver Gul'dan, 10 mana, 5 armor, battle cry, summon all friendly demons that die this game. So, very good effect. Actually, sorry, I want to go back. If Blood Queen Lanathel was a demon, I think that would push it into playable, because there's a lot of good demon stuff you can get from it, and also you might get it from the usual suspects I just mentioned. But because of the way it is, it's not. And obviously, I think being a demon might make it too strong, because then you could like sense demons for it specifically to like, tutor it and then play it, and then I don't know. Maybe if it got a demon tag, it'd be too strong. Who knows? I don't know. But anyways, back to Gul'dan. The battle cry is right now not looking that good, because the only demons that you really want to play, if you are a slow, like you're not going to play this Blood Reaver Gul'dan in a fast Warlock deck. It just won't happen. It's 10 freaking mana. Like you're going to be holding a dead card until 10 turns in, and if you're an aggressive Warlock, the game has to end before then, or you need to be in a dominant position, or you need to fight attrition where you life tap and draw 2 cards per turn, in which case you want to get cards out of your hand anyways. So this is not exactly a fast Warlock card. The slow defensive Warlock decks don't benefit off of the demons right now, outside of the immediate impact ones. The immediate impact are Doomguard, Lakari Fillhound, Despicable Dreadlord, and I guess you can consider like Voidwalker / Felguard, but that's not really what you play the Gul'dan for. The problem with 2 of those 3 cards is that you discard your hand, and as we mentioned, discard is not a very reliable way to play a slow deck in Warlock, because it just compromises fundamentally what you want to do. So I think it has potential to be really good. And I'm certain, and certainly going to be one of those scenarios where if you high roll with the Blood Reaver Gul'dan, you're going to be in a really good spot. And you don't need to summon too much, to be honest. Like people are thinking like, oh, you're going to have like 2 Doomguards, a Lakari Fillhound, a Despicable Dreadlord, a Flame Imp, and a Voidwalker. It's like you don't need all that. You actually just need like 2 taunts and like a reasonable sized minion. Like even 2 minions is okay if you're able to summon like of Despicable Dreadlord and Lakari Fillhound, as long as you don't die the next turn. And it's primarily because the hero power is so nutty. It's like it's a 3. It deals 3 damage, so you get like the power of a mass upgraded Shadow Form, and you get Lifesteal, and that's guaranteed for the rest of the game. And that's a 6 health swing, equivalent to Fireball, at least on paper. It's not always going to be that case, because sometimes you can't go past 30. But Blood Reaver Gul'dan's hero power is what might carry it into relevance. I don't think the battle cry is that good right now, but there is a lot of potential for it, and that's why I put the Death Knight Warlock into the bottom 3 as well for this set, because I think the drawback of it right now is too large for like synergizing it correctly. But the hero power is like it's strong. There's no getting around it. And unlike the Druid hero power, it doesn't need to attack with your face. You don't need to trade. So good stuff. It's also one of those. It's also one of those things where like lifesteal is particularly very good with Warlock because of how much you sacrificed your health to life tap in the first place. The downside is if you're playing this, you probably are not going to play Jiraxxus because it just works against each other, and Jiraxxus hero power is also really late game. And when I think about it, I have a hard time like really justifying Blood Reaver Gul'dan unless I'm trying to play like an attrition battle. And Jiraxxus is usually better at the attrition battle outside of like getting comboed because you're at 15 health. If you play Defile with Auctioneer, do you draw for each run? No, you don't. You don't. It's only going to be drawing you the 1 card from the beginning. Are you, Frodan, are you continuing with the deck text series? One thing I really enjoyed from MTG is every Pro Tour SCG has deck text on the new interesting decks. Yahoo Esports has officially closed business, so I won't. If I do make deck text series, it's not going to be with them. Rip Reno. In Wild, would you replace Jiraxxus with the Death Knight and Demon Reno? Interesting thought. Yeah, maybe it does work with Demon Reno, because a lot of times the Jiraxxus gives you inevitability, but you pull it from like Void Caller sometimes in Reno, or you can't play it because there's so many like strong combo stuff. But the thing is the Siphon Soul might be good enough to carry it in Wild. So I can see it working in Wild. I definitely think it's worth experimenting. Treachery is the real Yagner. You're right. Treachery just gives Yogg to your opponent. So Treachery and Unwilling Sacrifice, 2 big nerfs to Yogg. Will you go on stream or showdown anytime? Would like to see you challenge that way. I've been invited a few times, just unable to do it because of schedule. Do you know what time DLC comes out? It's slotted to come out in 10 hours on NA. Alright, so Warrior. Last class, and then we hit neutrals. This is a very long review. Hope you guys enjoy it, though. Thanks for everyone who's tuned in so far. So we have Blood Razor. People are comparing it to Deathbite. A very apt comparison because of the whirlwind effects. The battle cry of it does give it a lot of cool sequencing puzzles for a lot of the Warrior players. And its effect is very good. Whirlwind effects is just one of the best things about playing Warrior class. Because you get to enrage, you get to activate your minions that are on damage. You get to clear minions. It also sets up for stuff like Battle Rage. So Blood Razor is going to be one of those ubiquitous Warrior cards that has a lot of use and a lot of combo setups and a lot of potential. The nice thing is that they set up a card like this without giving Pirate Warrior more ammo. You know, one of the big challenges to Warrior right now, design-wise, is that any weapon that you design could, you know, hypothetically be used in an aggressive manner, and you don't want to reinforce the aggressive Warriors. And so, you know, because pirates are naturally very endemic with their synergy, like they only help other pirates. As long as you don't release like too many good pirates, it doesn't get much stronger. The way it can get stronger is weapons, and Blood Razor's not one of them. You can play Blood Razor to kill your opponent with Grom. You can use it to draw with Acolyte. You can use it to do Frodan Berserker combos. The possibilities are endless. Like Sudden Genesis, Blood Warriors, all kinds of fun stuff. Love it, love it, love it. Animated Berserker. After you play a minion, deal 1 damage to it. Oh, by the way, I do want to say Blood Razor is like a nod to the competitive players because it's like, I mean, that's pretty much what competitive players want in a card. Animated Berserker. After you play a minion, deal 1 damage to it. Very cute card because it helps you activate like your enraged stuff, your acolytes, helps activate, you know, your rot face. It seems too much of a setup because like the way 1/3s work in Hearthstone is 2 things. Either one, it helps you fundamentally like win, like it helps you with being aggressive, which I don't think this card's an aggressive card because it keeps damaging your minions. There is a world where like you can play an enrage aggro deck of some kind, like play this Amani Berserker, Frothing Berserker, Bloodhoof Brave on curve, but like there's not really that. So 1/3s tend to be put either in aggressive decks to get the board, or you use it because it's a really powerful effect that helps you like accelerate to your win condition in some capacity, like Northshire Cleric. So I don't think this fits in anything, even though the effect is like reasonable. And part of the reason why like effects like this don't always go well in Warrior is because it's unconditional and you don't want to damage every one of your minions. Part of the reason why like Cruel Taskmaster will probably it's likely to more see play than this is because you get to choose when you do it, and there's going to be times where you don't want Animated Berserker to deal damage to your minions. Very funny evolve scenario. You know, like you talk about Shaman and like evolve and whatnot, like devolve. They play Maelstrom Portal still, so there's going to be times where they play Animated Berserker and Maelstrom Portal, and then they like play weakened minions and stuff. So it'll be funny, that's for sure. Forge of Soul, draw 2 weapons from your deck. This kind of goes back to ice fishing and everything. 2 mana, draw 2 is really powerful, especially when you can dual-wield weapons in Warrior. Kappa. People who don't know, Trump pretended, like he was doing like a fake news thing where he pretended the Death Knight or Warrior, you get to dual wield as the Death Knight. He was like fake leaking it for fun, just a troll. Trump's actually a huge troll. People think he's like a very honest, like stand-up guy, but he loves messing with people more, like a lot more than you think, and that proves it. Forge of Souls, very reliable, very strong. Warrior's not really running too many weapons these days. It's like Fiery War Axe, and that's it. Like Quest Warrior tends to not run anything else besides that, unless you're playing a Pirate Warrior. Forge of Souls might be card draw for Pirate Warrior, actually, believe it or not. And Pirate Warrior, it might be just a one-of. I don't think it will go in it, but it can, because Pirate Warrior's already playing very like mid-range centric these days. They have so many 4-drops. Have you seen it? They play like Spellbreaker, Korkrons, Mortal Strike, Naga Corsair, and I guess if you count Dread Corsair, they have a lot of things crowding that mana slot in general, and it's causing them to extend to the late game, so they're playing like Bittertide Hydras and playing like, you know, extended board, and at that point they're just like a fast hybrid between aggro and mid-range, and setting up a big board and bursting. You know, it's like they use Naga Corsair, Captain Greenskin, Bittertide Hydra, and then they hit you for like 18 damage, and then you're dead the next turn. That's kind of like how they've been playing. Forge of Souls might help that. If not, then maybe a Temple Warrior deck can come back with Blood Razor, Mountain Fire Armor, and Forge of Souls. So it's cool, and Warrior does tend to struggle with card draw, which is why they're so dependent on Acolytes and even Shield Block. Like, I don't think Shield Block is traditionally a very good card in Warrior, but because card draw is so bad a lot of the times, without, like, obviously, unless you play Battle Rage, like, Forge of Souls is another way you can get that card draw consistently. Mountain Fire Armor, kind of mentioned it before, it's one of those paradox cards where it's stat aggressively, but its effect is defensive. So if you play a slow warrior, you want this to die on your opponent's turn, but your opponent won't want it to die, but at the same time, you get to trade very proactively as a 4/3 and even hit the face for 4. So kind of the tug of war of pulling back and forth on what it actually wants to accomplish. I don't think it's actually that great, but it's a cool design. Temple Warrior might benefit off of it because Temple style warriors do care about their health, because they're often sacrificing their health a lot to gain board control with weapons. So if they play, you know, Fire War Axe and they're playing against an aggressive deck, this could be teched in to try and play Temple style with the upside of being able to gain armor. But I generally think it's more of a cool design as opposed to a good card. And Warrior doesn't need it. They have so many other ways to play Tempo that they don't need Mountain Fire Armor. It's just like a very cute experimental card of what could be a core design for Hearthstone. You never know. Like, initially, Discover was just kind of okay in Hearthstone, right? We discovered Jeweled Scarab stuff. Like, Raven Idol was pretty good, but when Fandral came out, that's when Raven Idol became really good. And all kinds of Discover effects, like, you know, Discover Hero Power Finley was probably the best one. And people were like, oh, Discover's like super good, you know, Ethereal Conjurer, all this other stuff. And then Discover became like a core mechanic of Hearthstone, and now people are divided on it. Some people love it. A lot of people love it. You know, some people hate it. Some people are like okay on it. Who knows? Maybe like these experimental mechanics are super good and it becomes a core design of Hearthstone. If it's your opponent's turn, that becomes a fundamental interaction of how we play the game. So if you like this mechanic, you should be very vocal about it, because I think Blizzard does listen to that kind of feedback and they try to put that in the game. They feel like it's a very good result. Valkyrie Soul Claimer. Whenever this minion survives damage, summon a 2/2 ghoul. I mean, people are talking about Patron Reincarnate. Yeah, kind of. A lot weaker than that. And sets up like a funny scenario where like Defile might be able to solo this card if well, I guess it's a 1-for-1, but you know, everything that you work to accomplish is not necessarily as good. Just another interesting way to play like a token warrior maybe, or perhaps play aggressive warrior without being reliant on pirates. I don't know. That's about it. I don't think it's that great otherwise. I mean, let's see. Let's think about it. If you summon two targets with this, it's a 1/2 plus a 2/2, so it's 3 plus 4 plus 4. But you need to play like 2 cards with it as well. So it's a lot of setup. You can play Valkyrie Soul Claimer and then play the Blood Razor. Not a fan. The 1/4 is like really weak for trades. So a lot of times you won't be even killing the minion, even if it does survive. And it has to survive. It's not whenever this minion takes damage either. So yeah, I think it's pretty weak. At least nothing stands out to me immediately. I try to think like some redemptive value in it, but it just seems to be one of those like funny combo cards and nothing else. Yeah, like Cruel Taskmaster and like that kind of stuff is like what the ways you can buff it, but maybe that's the way you play it. Then you just Cruel Taskmaster, Inner Rage, etc. Death Revenant, 5 mana, 3/3, gain +1/+1 for each damage minion. Cool concept. Once again, Warriors' drawback, give and take, is damaging for a better effect. Hurting yourself to get stronger, but also weakening yourself at the same time. Cool flavor, and love everything about the art, because it's like kind of like a Grim Reaper personified by a knight. It doesn't look very competitive in the beginning, but in the late stages of the game, I mean, if you're able to get 3 damage minions, it's already positive in tempo for the mana you put into it. If you play as a 5/5, it's also passable. Late game scenario, what you can do, like Ravaging Ghoul, attack with your Blood Razor, Death Revenant, to get like maximum amount of value into it. Doesn't seem that competitive otherwise. Seems more like an arena card to me. Bring It On, reduce 10 armor, or sorry, reduce 10 armor. Gain 10 armor, reduce the cost of your minions in your opponent's hand by 2. Yeah, one of the cooler flavor cards of the set, and one of those like out there cards. Like, why would I want to reduce my opponent's hand by 2 just to gain 10 life? And then you start thinking about it. Well, when do I play this card? It's definitely not a curve card. Maybe I don't mind my opponent playing his minions because I have Brawl or Sleep with the Fishes. Or maybe my opponent, but then the opponents are thinking, well, he's baiting me into Brawl, so I'll just play like 2 minions. And Warrior's like, well, I don't have Brawl. He's giving me time instead of flooding the board. So there's like these interesting scenarios, and I think the pro players are really divided on it. Some Control Warrior players are saying like it's great, and some of the other players are just like it's awful. So I don't know. I kind of lie on the fence of that it's bad, but I mean, gain 10 life for 2 is really good in a Control Warrior. So I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm copping out. I feel like I've taken decisive opinions on a lot of cards, like the vast majority on them, and there's very few cards where I'm just like, I'm on the fence, 50-50, could be good, could be bad, kind of like being safe. But this is a card where like I really don't know, man. I do see a world where like if this card kind of like stops. Gives Control Warrior option to stop aggro by being able to combo like very cheap. The fact that it's 2 mana is very important because a lot of times you struggle as Warrior to fit in very efficient plays and gain life. So like being able to use Bring It On and like Ravaging Ghoul, Sleep with the Fishes, or Whirlwind Sleep with the Fishes, like the less mana it costs, the better. And 2 mana is really cheap. Like that's what I'm saying, man. It's really cheap. Another like weird subtle Yogg nerf. So yeah, it's one of the more interesting cards of the set, and of course the flavor is cool. The way the Warrior stance is, I'm willing to take the fight, and it's like got all this golden armor. You're gaining 10 life. You're also kind of yelling it, "Bring it on!" in exclamation points. So I feel like it's a requirement to yell it every single time you play it. I hope when you play it, the hero says it, but I don't think it'll be the case. I think you're just gonna be like a rah, like a Bloodlust or a whatever cry, like Mortal Strike. Dead Man's Hand, one of the memeiest cards of the set. You get to shuffle a copy in your hand in your deck. You get to shuffle more Dead Man's Hand. It's pretty much used as a way to win control matchups. So it's just like in my opinion, it's no different than like an Elite Starseeker. Just gives you ways to win fatigue matchups if the control meta, if you're trying to tech against a control meta or a control deck. The nice thing about Dead Man's Hand is that usually shuffling cards in your deck dilutes the benefit of drawing it. So, or sorry, the effect of diluting your deck outweighs the benefits of having it, like Prince Malchezaar. But Dead Man's Hand, like, your deck's already synergizing with everything in it, and it might give you extended range to do other fun stuff. So if you have multiple legendaries, or you need to extend the game through another Dead Man's Hand, then by all means, knock yourself out. I don't think it's very competitive inherently, but certainly fun to see, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Trollden videos, and I'm sure, you know, Toast is going to try to break the game somehow with that. Rotface, legendary minion. Whenever this minion survives damage, summon a random legendary minion. I agree when I think this card is overrated by a large portion of the player base when they think this card is really good. They think like, oh man, so many whirlwind effects. I do think that it's a solid card, but I don't think Warrior needs this kind of card to win the game. It's just a cool win condition that you don't really think about because it's like, oh, I want to like damage my minion to gain more legendary minions. But the average legendary minion is in general is not that great these days. There's a lot of weak ones, ranging all the way from like patches. It's like, oh, I whirlwind and got patches, sick. To the traditional ones like Van Cleef at 2/2, Lord Walker Cho, etc. The other ones that get you screwed, and even like the late game ones aren't like super duper strong in terms of just summoning it. But if you do manage to get like some of the highest cost ones, like, you know, Yashiraj, Ysera, it's like, it's really scary to think about the possibilities. And if you're able to even summon like a reasonable cost minion by, like, you can, like, the nice thing about it is that most cards that do this kind of effect usually require too much elaborate setup, but Warrior tends to whirlwind effect anyways, like what they want to do. They usually have Ravaging Ghouls. They're probably going to run Blood Razors. They're probably going to have like other stuff. So like, the nice thing is that Rotface fits very neatly in without having to compromise your deck. So I can imagine some control warriors using this for just as like a single, like a win condition threat, and like force your opponent to remove it. Don't think it's gonna be like the card that puts control warrior or any kind of defensive warrior on the map though. Scourge Lord Garrosh, equip a 4/3 Shadowmourne that also deals damage to adjacent minions. So there's a card that does this. It's a wild card from GVG. It is the Foe Reaper, I want to say 3000. And every time you attack a minion, it deals that same damage to the left and right minion. It's the same effect here. The weapon is very good. The weapon really, really good. 4 damage, which translates to 12, up to 12. And 3 swings of it in a class that pretty much helps you gain armor is great. Bladestorm, hero power, deal 1 damage to all minions is also like a pretty good thing. The only problem is that this card doesn't win you the game the way you want an 8 mana card to do. Usually on 8 mana, it's like, okay, if I play an 8 mana card, it's the beginning of the end. If you don't deal with it, it sometimes wins you the game, but it's like, if you do deal with it, it's like, it starts a chain of events where you're starting to wrap up the game. Unless you're just like a straight up fatigue style. The problem with Bladestorm is that it doesn't actually get you any closer to winning. It only is a synergy-based thing. Every other hero power does end up getting you to that. Like, even Shaman, which is probably the only other like weak thing, like assuming you're in a vacuum and you have no board. If it sticks 1 minion and you just keep hero powering it, you will get to that point where like it's just overwhelming the opponent. So even if you can stick 1 minion with Shaman, that hero power is good with the Death Knight. But Warrior is only a synergistic hero power, and that kind of limits it a lot based off of the texture of your hand. If you have a lot of cards, it's a great hero power. If you have very few cards, which Warrior tends to struggle with as a mechanic, it's very weak. And the 1 damage to all enemy minions isn't really like a decisive swing on the board for an 8 mana card. You need to like really swing it heavily. So I think the Warrior is a little bit on the weaker side. I don't think it's in the bottom 3 of Hunter, Warlock, Shaman, but I was kind of flirting with the idea of putting Shaman in the middle and then Warrior on the bottom. or even Warlock. I was willing to put Warlock in the middle 3, but I think Warrior is in the middle 3 primarily because of how much synergy that does exist in Bladestorm. Bladestorm is like in general, Whirlwind Effects is very good in Warrior, and it makes sure that you're not like drawing dead if you pick up an Enrage minion or like an Acolyte of Pain. But it does tend to be one of the weaker ones, I think. So I'm not super impressed by this card, and I think I'd rather have Armor Up in a lot of cases with Warrior. Oh, man. We're through the classes, which means we only have like 40 cards left, and I think I'm going to like blaze through a lot of these remaining cards here. It hurts your minions. Yeah, it deals damage to all minions. But, you know, if you're a control warrior, you usually don't care about your own minions that much. You're trying to just, like, stabilize onto the board. Can Rotface summon a Rotface? It can. Also Magnetor Alpha. Yep, another card that does that effect. Skip the princes, please.